Okay, so for this lesson, we're going to be working on the classical order of light. In order for this demo, I set up white eggs in a white bowl in a white setup. We're talking about form and value, so I'm paying particular attention to the cast shadow. I will point out the cast shadow at the bottom of the bowl here, and the core shadow is right along the shadow part of the egg. So we have the light side of the egg and then a soft core shadow. So as you begin to work on your piece, now remember this is just a sketch. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the horizon line. I want to avoid the center point. So I have a choice to bring the horizon line down or up. I'm above these eggs, so I'm going to bring the horizon line up above the center point, lightly indicate the horizon line. Now I'm looking at the bowl and it is breaking the horizon line. I'm going to create kind of a center point for my bowl. I'm going to guesstimate the left edge of the bowl to be generally about here. I'd like to center the bowl, so I'm going to go over to the opposite side of my drawing and make a little bit of a mark here. This will be the center of my bowl. And then I'm going to need an ellipse for the top of the bowl. I am going to sight the top of the bowl to the bottom of the bowl is deeper. So I'm going to make a little mark here for the top of the bowl, the base. The bottom of the top of the bowl, the eggs will sit within this frame and then jump down and create the base of the bowl. So I just, with ink, keep in mind this is a sketch, I put in my marks to create an ellipse, and then we'll just roughly sketch in that ellipse. After you eyeball generally where you want some things, this is the center of my bowl. And then I'm looking at the shape of the bowl. I am just very lightly sketching with a 0.3 illustration pen. Come down and around to the base of the bowl, really trying to get the shape correct. Now I have a shadow that's coming out from the bowl, and it wraps around and off the page, out of the picture plane, and that shadow goes all the way off the horizon line, so it goes all the way out this far. So now I know this is going to be my shadow. The left edge of the bowl is in shadow. Okay, then inside the bowl I have my eggs. I'm looking at the topmost egg is right about here. I'm going to sketch it in. And then I have there's an egg in front. I'm going to rough in that egg. Watching the shape of that egg. And then I have another egg coming out toward me. Keeping in mind just very, very light shape. Remember we went over our contour line drawing. So we're imagining this to be a contour line. Okay, so now that we're talking about the classical order of light, now that we have our everything roughed in, now we're going to work on modeling the form of the egg. So there is a shadow that comes off of this egg back here and comes in. Another shadow right behind that egg. So in order to help to create form, we do want to rough in our shadow. Now I'm going to show you the shadow goes from dark to light. Remember, the closer you are to your object, the shadow is darker, and as you move out from that shadow, it gets lighter. So with both of these shadows, I'm starting at the egg and I'm moving outward. Now because it's just a shadow and it's not the egg, I'm not too concerned about the form. Okay, so, and we're going to keep this egg white. Now as I move into, now I also have my shadow with the base of the bowl. Here again, The shadow's always darker, closest to the form, and I'm moving in the direction that the light is moving. The light is moving across the picture from the right to the left. So I'm going to just start making these rough marks, keeping in mind this is just a sketch. And I did have some questions about how do I create my hash marks. Okay, so now we've got the eggs in the bowl, and we're looking at, the bowl is white and there is a background shadow which we could fill in later, but for now I'm going to work on the form of the egg. So I'm going to start with the core shadow and slowly move around the edges of the egg. So I'm moving in the direction that the light is moving. Keeping in mind the core shadow is one of the darkest parts of the egg next to the cast shadow. Now there's some reflective light on the other end of this egg, so I'm not going to let it get dark there. Now I'm going to move out from that core shadow and maybe just mark a couple of small hash marks to indicate the outer edge of the egg. Now there's a cast shadow shape right here, cast by the egg on the right. So here I can go in and create a darker shadow. This will give me the edge of this egg. Once again, I'm double checking. I'm always looking at my still life to make sure that I have that core shadow moving in the direction that I want it to go. Okay, so we have the core shadow now on this part of the egg. I'm moving my pen along the shape of the shadow, and that will help to allow these eggs to feel round. Keeping in mind this is white on white, so I don't need to get too dark. Only in the shadow area will I get dark. Okay, so then we have an egg in the background, and once again the core shadow is right up here. So I'm just going to put some small hash marks to indicate the back end of this egg. There is reflective light alongside of the egg as it moves into the cast shadow, so I do want to give that form. You have the light side of the egg and the dark side of the egg. So I don't want to lose that dark side and that form. If I need to get darker in my shadow area, I could always go in and get darker in the shadow area, and that will help to bring back that reflective light on the reflective light side of the eggs. Okay, but for now, I'm just working on the cast shadow and the core shadow to give those eggs in the bowl a three-dimensional feel. So now we have a core shadow that is right along the left edge of the bowl. I want to maintain the nice rim, and so now I will move my hash marks in the direction of the bowl. This will help give me volume. Now keep in mind, I'm keeping my eye on the still life, and I notice this core shadow along the bowl begins to move down the bowl at an angle. So I'll go in here. Remember, left side of the bowl is in shadow. There might be some reflective light bouncing up in this area. So I'm moving my hash marks in the direction of the bowl to maintain the roundness of the bowl. And I can go back over the core shadow with another stroke, giving a sense that this is a core shadow, the place in which the light is no longer seen. Okay, and the right side of the bowl is lighter, so I'll use light, long, spaced out hash marks for the light side of the bowl. Could go in here with a cross hatch to reinforce this shadow. We want this cast shadow to be darker than the bowl because it's underneath the bowl, so I'm going to go in there and just get it a little bit darker underneath the bowl. Keeping in mind, the cast shadow is always darker closer to the object and lighter as you move away from the object. Okay, now I have a cast shadow inside of the bowl. Actually, it's more of a coarse shadow, but it's along the inner edge where there is no light coming into the bowl. There's light reflected off the egg to the inside of the bowl here, but this is the point at which there is no light in the bowl. Once again, moving around the shape of the bowl. So as you make your marks, you could always reinforce your ellipse. Now behind the bowl, so we can continue to make some light marks. So behind the bowl we have, it is a white background, but we may want to do some hash marks to indicate that it's probably a number 3 value. There's a bit of a cast shadow back here from this bowl. So we can start up in the upper left-hand corner and come down across to indicate that you have a light background value back here, and then move in off of the white bowl to reinforce that there might be a bit of a shadow back here. Keeping in mind I'm keeping all of this very loose, but in order to create volume, I'm paying really close attention to the classical order of light, which we went over in our lecture. So once again, this side of a highlight hits the bowl here, but this is still it's light, but it's maybe a number 3 light. So I'm looking at the edge of the bowl, and the back edge of the bowl, it's darker behind the bowl, and then it's a little bit darker on this side of the bowl. You do have a highlight right in there that you can pull out. There's a bit of a shadow edge along this egg. Now you can start to go in and refine with a dotted line the shape of your eggs. So the last part, we put in our shadows, our core shadow, and you can begin to go in and start to refine anywhere that you want to darken areas. Always keeping in mind that this is a sketch class. You don't have to get too detailed, but it's good to just practice sketching, because this type of sketching allows you to plan for a painting or a project. I'm looking once again, last minute refinement, nice and dark underneath here. This shadow looks like it needs to get a little bit dark, so I can just throw in some values, just indicating the shape of the bowl. You have a nice edge to indicate the thickness of the bowl. All these little details are up to you. This helps us to see that this bowl is 3-dimensional. Whenever you're doing a cup or a bowl, it's nice to go in and just do a few refinements on edges. And those edges will help to indicate that this is three-dimensional. So we have a shadow on the top edge of this bowl, and that shadow comes down into the core shadow area. So once you put in your big shadows, your big shapes, then you can go in and do some refinement. Here again, just some cross-hatching to reinforce that this is the shadow side of the bowl. I'm squinting at the bowl, and the left, there is a darker shadow area in here, so I'll go back in and I'm pulling out this darker shadow edge along the bowl. The bowl is white, and this cast shadow is a little bit darker than the white bowl. So I'm just going in to do a little bit more refinement there. I can also refine the shape of the bowl. Thinking of plane changes and the direction that we're going in. There's a little thickness of the bowl underneath here. All these little details you can add later. Notice that I work on the big shapes first, and then I put in details later to refine the shape of the left edge of the bowl. Ellipses are very tricky. You're always looking at the right and the left side to make sure your ellipses are correct. Looks like this should come in a little bit more, and there's room to make that refinement because that is the shadow side. So we have the front of the bowl. The back edge of this bowl can be refined. It's a little bit not exactly resolved. And I'll just have the background of this bowl is darker than the inside of the bowl. So I'm just adding another value, once again with cross-hatching in the back. It's really nice to lose edges. You don't have to draw a straight line. This front end of the bowl is in highlight, so it's nice to have a lost edge here. Found and lost edges are nice. We tend to lose a little bit of an edge right here. I didn't have to finish that off. I might, just to soften this edge, I may just add some value just to soften this area. This would be the highlight area where the light is hitting. And just adding this extra value helps for that shadow to be transparent. And give the indication that there isn't a surface, that this bowl is on a surface.